Episode of Faith in Politics, where we are going to be talking about the freedom of speech. We are going to talk about election reform. And as always, we're going to experience the world according to Jim. And then we're going to talk about some local issues right here in Hawaii. So let's chat about that. Edgar Allan Poe once said, "Words have no power to impress the mind without the exquisite horror of their reality." When I was growing up, my mother would use various sayings, and one of them made me very curious as to the origin, and so I had to look it up. And what she said was, "Nothing goes over the devil's back that don't scratch it." I tried to look to see where that came from, and I couldn't find that exact quote, but I did see that in the South, they have a very similar saying that says, "What goes over the devil's back always comes back under his belly." And basically what that means is what goes around comes around. So I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about words and their use. Definitions used to be really easy because all you'd have to do is look it up in the dictionary. But today, the vernacular changes, and then suddenly so does the dictionary. Harry Potter fans were very excited when both Muggle and Quidditch were added to the Oxford Dictionary. Now, how does that happen? Well, in Oxford Dictionary's case, they have a watch list, which decides on which words are likely to gain inclusion into the dictionaries. But when I started thinking about it, dictionaries aren't the only organizations that have watch lists. I mean, if you think about Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, YouTube, all of these social media, they have a group of people that basically decide on words that are going to be excluded. So if they don't like what you're saying, then they just boot you off of their platform. And these people are called fact checkers. I was wondering if words like Christian or Christ-like are going to be so triggering that one day they too may be removed by the social media watch lists. Christians are described, and sometimes they're named and sometimes they're not, as hate groups because of the very foundational beliefs that they have and things they teach from the pulpit. So I love the way that John starts. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Everything begins with the Word. And we believe that Jesus is the Word, that He is the messenger. He is the spokesperson. He is that very place that all truth comes from. And while there are some people who consider themselves watchdogs of society who like to block things that they don't like, Jesus, on the other hand, was very inclusive. He loved everybody, even those people with whom he disagreed. Some words have longevity and meaning that will survive the test of time. So I'll leave you with a quote from Winston Churchill. "All the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, and hope." And that's my thoughts for this week. Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of Faith in Politics. Welcome, Jim.
Good morning. You triggered me.
I triggered you?
You did, the word dictionary.
Don't say the word triggered.
When I was a kid and I was like elementary school writing something and I couldn't remember how to spell it, I would ask my mom. And you know what she would say?
Look it up.
Look it up. If you don't know how to spell it, do you know how frustrating it is to look something up?
Well, you know what's interesting, and I think it really ties into this first segment that we're going to talk about, which is the freedom of speech, because I know that now when I look up things in a dictionary, they don't say the same thing that they used to say when you used to look it up.
That's true, too.
I mean, if you think of the word like marriage, right? Marriage used to be, a union of one man and one woman. And now, right, it means something else.
And it will change again.
And it'll change again. So how do we have this discussion about the freedom of speech when speech can change?
But that's okay. The founders weren't worried about changing of speech because they'd experienced English from Shakespeare going forward, and we don't talk like Shakespeare anymore. So it has changed. But the reason the founders were interested in freedom of speech is because they very well understood that being free to speak allows you to continue to be free to think. And thinking is actually really freedom. And what we're seeing today in, like banning Dr. Seuss books or...
Can you say Dr. Seuss now on social media, or is that going to be banned too?
Well, you're going to have to be able to say it because I'm not going to quit talking about this because I'm a little ticked off.
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of people in the nation that feel like you do.
Getting rid of Dr. Seuss, I think, is motivated more by a desire to take away that part of my culture that grew up with reading Dr. Seuss books, learning how to read. And it's less about the content of the books, because the content of the books, I haven't read them again since this came up, but I don't remember anything bad at all. It was all kinds of whimsical fantasy.
Well, it's interesting that you say that.
But hang on, because taking that part of my growing up away is actually taking away part of my actual personal culture, of my own history. And it's depriving new Americans or English-speaking people of enjoying that same building block of your thinking.
Well, I was watching somebody who is a spokesperson for Black Lives Matter, and this was in 2017. It was an interview done on Fox News, I believe, with Tucker Carlson. And what she mentioned in that interview was that some of the issues that she had with Dr. Seuss were the drawings in the book, that some depicted people of an Asian ethnicity and some of the ways that they drew. So it was offensive, but she had not noticed it before until somebody called it to her attention. And then she went. But the interesting thing is when you look at the history of Dr. Seuss, I understand he was very liberal, actually.
I don't know anything about his pre-kid books. Before he started writing the whimsical fantasy cartoon, very few words on the page for little kids to be able to learn how to read. I don't know that much about.
Well, since we're talking about...
but they're not banning anything previous. They're banning the stuff I read as a kid.
Well, but the attack right now is on Dr. Seuss, right? So, I mean, it's like, again, what do we say in the show all the time? Check your facts.
Correct.
Don't just listen to what somebody's saying. And especially now, because anybody can have a show. We have a show. Anybody could have a show. You could have something on YouTube, right? So it's just check the facts. Look up, Dr. Seuss and make your own opinion. But because we're talking about free speech, though, I want to get your opinion because there was a time in this country when book burning was okay. People got upset by books, and so they had these big bonfires and they'd burn these books. So when are we crossing the line on free speech? Okay.
So first of all, you are free to put any book you don't like in your barbecue and light it on fire. The author of that book has no free speech protection against private citizens doing whatever they want, an entire church getting together to do, a mosque getting together, a Boy Scout troop, a baseball team. Free speech protected by the Constitution protects all of us from the government infringing on our free speech.
Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to get your thoughts on because you and I were talking about this craziness that's happening. But first thing I want to do is I want to read to you a quote from Javier Becerra when he was being when they were getting ready to...
He was running for AG of California.
Right. Thank you. Yep. Sorry, I was tongue-tied. I don't think I've had enough coffee. I am tongue-tied. Okay, but I want to read to you the quote that he said at the time of his hearing, and I want to get your opinion. So what he said was, and I quote, "On religious protections, the protection for religion is for the individual. I think it is important to distinguish between protections that you are affording to the individual to exercise his or her religion freely versus protections you are giving to some institution or entity who is essentially bootstrapping the First Amendment protections on behalf of somebody else."
He's a very dangerous human being because he's misguided, misinformed, uneducated, or intentionally political.
And
he's probably intentionally political.
And what is he running for? I mean, what is he being
well, he's trying
nominated?
to get a medical position in the federal government, which he's also unqualified for.
Yes, and we're going to continue to talk about that as we move forward. So what I want to do right now is I want to just build the platform.
But can I expand the definition of free speech?
Yes, hold on. I'm going to let you do that because I know you want to do that. But what I want to do first is just to go through what actually right now the freedom of speech is and what it isn't. And I got this directly from uscourts.com, okay? So the freedom of speech includes the right not to speak and that is specifically the right not to salute the flag.
Which is a case that I had about not making the Place for Women in YPO have 72 state legislative mandated words supporting abortion in their lobby.
See, this is why it's so perfect.
They have the right not to have that speech.
And this is why it's so perfect for you to be on the show, because that way you can give the legal aspect of things. Okay, so the freedom of speech includes the right of students to wear black armbands to school to protest a war.
And that was the Vietnam War era.
Yes. So the freedom of speech gives you the right to use certain offensive words and phrases to convey political messages.
Which is in danger of being eliminated as free speech.
It gives you the right to contribute money under certain circumstances to political campaigns.
That's Citizens United.
Okay. It gives you the right to advertise commercial products and professional services with some restrictions.
Correct.
And it gives you the right to engage in symbolic speech, like, for instance, burning the flag in protest.
Do you know that when I was in law school and I was taking constitutional law, without any legal support for it at all, but my constitutional law professor was so extremely liberal, he told us that naked dancing was an exercise of free speech. Subsequently, the court said, no, it's not.
Interesting. Okay, well, the courts say that freedom of speech does not include the right to incite actions that would harm others, and that's like shouting fire in a crowded theater.
If there's no real fire. If there's a fire, you are allowed to do that.
Right. You cannot make or distribute obscene materials.
Which the court said, you can't really define it, but you know it when you see it.
Okay. Well, and then
that's the test.
No, I know, and we could do a whole show just on that. It does not give you the right to burn draft cards
because it's a government document. You can burn most other pieces of information on paper.
Okay. It does not give you the right to permit students to print articles in a student newspaper with when there's objections of the school administration.
And that's because in high school, there's a pedagogical aspect to being on the student newspaper, and the teachers are in charge of pedagogy, so that's why.
Okay. And it doesn't give the right to students to give an obscene speech at a school-sponsored event.
Same event, same thing.
And it does not give students the right to advocate illegal drug use at a school-sponsored event.
I was not aware of that one.
Yeah, that is Morse versus Frederick. That's a 2007 case.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, did Jim Hochberg learn something today?
I did. So what happens if you got in trouble for doing that and then the state decriminalized that particular drug?
Well, you'll have to look that up.
Do you get out of jail?
I don't know. You'll have to look that up and get back to us.
Okay.
Okay. So now you and I were talking, and we just have a few seconds left.
So let me jump in so I don't lose my time, because free speech also includes, last week, a federal judge saying that beauty pageant in the Miss USA or Miss America thing has the free speech right not to include transgendered boys as girls in the pageant, because the pageant is an application of their free speech. They have a message for girls, and boys would ruin the message.
Wow, there's so much that we can still unpack, and we will definitely do that as we move forward. So let's, when we come back in Faith in Politics, we'll get right into some other issues like election reform. We'll be right back.
We have a mission here at Calo TV. We continue to be the only local Christ-centered media outlet in Hawaii. God has planted this station to nourish believers and to harvest souls for eternity. It's a calling we hold dear, and today we need your help. Partner with us as we continue to create original local programs.
We're so very grateful for that whole journey.
Walking down to our story room.
Oh my God.
Showcase solid biblical teaching.
We reach more people in one day with the broadcast of the gospel.
It's music to God's ears.
Improve our infrastructure, and influence social media. Are you willing to labor with us for Hawaii, for your ohana, for the next generation? Go to kalotv.com and partner with us today.
Welcome back to Faith in Politics. And now, Jim, we are going to talk about what everybody across this nation is talking about, and that's election reform.
House last night passed that H.R. 1.
H.R. 1, and it's for the People Act. And for
It's not. It's for the Democrats to stay in office act.
You are cracking me up. Okay, so what is interesting is that this is an over 741-page document.
And I heard Charlie Kirk say on the radio on my way up here today that they had no committee hearings on it whatsoever.
No, it's really scary. Now, so what I want to do is I kind of want to go through what some of the things they're saying that this H.R. 1 does. And it passed in the House. And for those people in Hawaii know that both of our representatives voted yes on this bill, not surprisingly. So one of the things that it does is it creates a national automatic voter registration that asks voters to opt out rather than opt in. So your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are on all of the points, every single point in there. This country is not designed nor intended to run elections from Congress. So everything that Congress is doing, imposing requirements for elections, is regulating every county in the country. And the system that's been in effect since before 1776 was that counties always regulated elections because the best government is always at the most local level. And because that is the main change going on here, I'm completely opposed. Even if it's a good idea, it needs to be left to the counties.
I think that where everybody starts in agreement is that everybody wants all legal citizens to be able to vote. Nobody, if they're a legal citizen, should be stopped from voting.
But there's nothing in a national registration opt-out that means anybody that didn't opt out is a legal voter.
Right. And I think that that's the concern that people have is that some of the things that, because this bill is massive. Can I just say what really bugs me right now? I'm just going to throw it out there. I am tired of these massive monster bills that Congress puts out. And I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. They put out these monster bills that include everything in the kitchen sink. And then what happens is, rather than us focusing, if they wanted to fix certain aspects of elections, why they couldn't deal with one section. Now, I know it would make more work. I get it. Okay. They only have a certain amount of days they got to do stuff. But what happens in these massive bills, like the COVID relief bill, right? It's a massive monster of a bill.
And you know why? RPP. Remember from last week?
Yes.
It's raw political power. They have enough votes to do whatever they want. And that's what they're doing.
Well, I know for expediency, right? Okay, let's make a massive bill and we'll deal with. But explain.
No, it's because they can get it all done at once while they have the raw political power.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Actually, I did hear. I forget who it was today. Let me think about it because I want to make sure that I quote the right person. But basically, saying that even the Democrats are worried that they're not going to hold on to the House. In 2022. And so what they might be trying to do right now is ram everything through right now while they control both houses.
Well, they actually, as long as Joe Manchin won't get rid of the filibuster, there is actually a slight little teeny tiny candle power glimmer of hope that things won't get through the Senate.
Jim, I think trying to fix election issues, there's a lot of people in this country that feel like there were election issues in the 2020 election. So, I do think that it's a discussion that needs to be had, but this H.R. 1 may or may not be accomplishing the intent.
So, let's think about where these opt-in, the automatic voter reg names are coming from. They're coming from lists that the government has access to. The government gives welfare money.
DMV.
DMV, but think about how many times over the number of years there have been news stories about some husband and wife in Los Angeles or somewhere that get arrested for having been receiving like $3 million of welfare money on behalf of 25 people that they made up. And they registered them for welfare, and they're getting all this money, and they got caught, and so it's news. Well, those 25 people are on the voting list, and they don't even exist.
Well, I'm sure there are people that are listening or watching, and they're going, Jim, don't quote the 1% of problems that are out there.
No, the guy that got caught. What about, all the people in all the other government programs that haven't been caught?
Well, again, let's start at the place where I believe everybody agrees. And I think that people who are legal citizens of the United States of America should be allowed to vote.
Well, unless they've lost their right to vote by committing felonies, which has been this.
And this is all very clear.
It's always been that way. And this bill lets felons vote again.
Well, it's this bill has so many things in it. It has.
If you're in prison, you're on a list that the government can give you voting rights. How about that?
Well, and I think that, first of all, I don't know how many Americans are going to actually read a 750-plus page bill to see what's in it. So we have to rely on people that are reading the bill and putting out these lists.
So
right?
The rules of the House and Senate allow a member to ask that the entire language of the bill be read. And I hope somebody does that on COVID and on the H.R. 1, because if it's 700 pages, it's going to put everybody to sleep and they'll forget to vote.
Right. And so just because of transparency, I want people to know that this list I'm reading, I got from Vox online, just because I wanted to find a good simplified way of looking at everything. This H.R. 1 also requires each state to put online options for voter registration, correction, cancellation. Now, Hawaii already has this, but I think the concern that has been brought up on that is that hackers can get a hold of anything that's done online. And so is there a potential for fake registrations to happen online?
And that's one of the safeguards of having voting done at the county level. Even if it's electronic at the county level, I forget how many thousand counties there are in the country. If you really want to affect a national election, it's an awful lot of hacking work because they're all individually universed.
Yep. And I really want to get your thoughts on this next point. Requires at least 15 consecutive days of early voting for federal elections. Early voting sites would be open for at least 10 hours per day. Okay, that's not too bad. But the bill also prohibits states from restricting a person's ability to vote by mail and requires states to prepay postage on return envelopes for mail-in voting.
So what I'm telling you is this is not in the purview of the jurisdiction of Congress.
But they did it.
Well,
they did it, Jim.
But listen to this. At the same time, they're deciding what every state county is going to have for election law. States across the country right now are passing restrictive laws. Georgia, Hawaii. Hawaii's got a bunch of, which we're going to talk about later, a bunch of election-related bills that are violative, if they pass, of this law from Congress if it passes. It's not Congress's business.
So basically what you're saying is that Congress should keep their nose out of the tent and let the states deal with their election reform.
Well, the nose of Congress got under the tent with the Civil Rights Voting Act decades ago, where Congress decided that the way elections were being held in certain states—
Hawaii was one of them, by the way.
Certain states, mostly in the South, that were discriminatory against blacks, that they couldn't modify their laws without getting approval of the Justice Department. That was the nose of the camel under the tent. That was pretty benign. You just can't change your laws unless you check with us. But this H.R. 1 is using the false flag of racism as the justification for doing this. And voting, in my experience, none of the voting regulations are actually tied to any race ever. I'm only 63, so I haven't been around as long as voting has. But in my experience, it's never been based anything at all on race. It's always based on a valid election.
Yeah, and I know I remember as a child watching my parents go vote, and I always thought that was the coolest thing. And I was really looking forward to that day that I could vote because it was a big thing, right? You'd have to go to the precinct, right? You'd have to stand in line. You'd have to show proof of who you were to vote, right? You couldn't just go up and do it. And it was kind of an exciting thing, I voted, but that's, the mentality that people had back then. But now it's like, I voted, my brother's friends, cousins, nieces, uncles, friends, cousins, brother also voted, and we're getting to the point now where you mentioned this person with 25 people that weren't even part. So, I mean, I guess the point is that even if you argue that that's a small percentage of people, the problem is that it's wrought for problems.
Correct. And when I look at H.R. 1, what it is, I mean, just on its face, look at the words, like you said in your intro, all of the issues that were complained about in the last general election are now codified in this bill. Why that's a good idea for anybody when the result of the last election is 75 million people believe that the guy they voted for probably won, and we have an invalid guy in place of him by all the shenanigans. 75 million people, that's more people than I know. And to codify that result going forward is tearing the country apart based on elections. It makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah, it's really scary. I think one of the things in this bill that is particularly scary to me is that it prohibits rolls from being purged. And
why does Congress want to do that?
I don't know.
It's not their job.
It doesn't make any sense to me because anyone who has control of a database understands that information needs to be purged on an ongoing basis.
Okay, so on this database, it's opt-out. So that means the government is going to put people in and prohibit removing them.
Yeah,
there's an agenda behind that. It's so clear and obvious to me.
It's scary. And I think that every single citizen needs to contact your representative. Well, the representative's already passed it. Contact your senator and just let them know how you feel about this. Because there's something, there are questions that are not being answered. And I think when
you call Hawaii senators, remind them what the state of Hawaii legislature is doing. We're trying to tighten elections here, while these senators, if they vote for this, are loosening it, and it's inconsistent.
Now, there's something that you said a couple minutes ago, and I kind of want to build on that. See, right now, the U.S. Supreme Court is actually hearing two cases out of Arizona. One is, should ballots that were made in a different county be counted, right? That's one of them.
Right, because what the law that they're challenging said is, if you bring your ballot to the wrong county voting place, it doesn't count. That's sort of a practical way of dealing with a problem that they must have had with, I mean, where do we vote? When we used to vote in person before last year, you go to the elementary school that's like within walking distance of your house. So how can you go to the wrong county? Well, we also have counties surrounded by water, and they don't. So putting that into perspective, I suppose it is possible to go to the wrong county if you live near the county line. What the law said was, you can't count it if you do it in the wrong thing. And the other part of that law was,
the second part is whether a person of the family can turn in somebody's,
who can collect
or
a ballot for somebody else.
Can you do it as a group,
Correct.
or whatever? So they're going to be addressing that.
Both of those claims are being challenged, again, with the false flag of racism. Racism has nothing to do with either of those issues. But when you hear the people that are opposed to that law, their argument is it's racist. Why? I don't know. Because people of certain races can't remember their county, and certain races need other people to deliver their ballot. That's racist.
We'll be right back with what's happening in the world according to Jim.
We have a mission here at Kalo TV. We continue to be the only local Christ-centered media outlet in Hawaii. God has planted this station to nourish believers and to harvest souls for eternity. It's a calling we hold dear, and today we need your help. Partner with us as we continue to create original local programs.
We're so very grateful for that whole journey
walking down to our story room.
Oh my God.
Showcase solid biblical teaching.
We reach more people in one day with the broadcast of the gospel.
It's music to God's ears.
Improve our infrastructure and influence social media. Are you willing to labor with us for Hawaii, for your ohana, for the next generation? Go to kalotv.com and partner with us today.
Hey everybody, welcome to Talk Story Unscripted. My name is Pete.
I'm Doug.
And I'm Jason Town, the human beatbox.
I've wanted to say this my whole life. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Drop that beat!
Your turn.
Yeah, I love you being here, dude. You are talented and you are full of God's word. I love it.
Yeah, encouraging. I think it's really important, And I love what you have to say about your identity.
Yeah.
That's more important than even any talent or anything like that.
Right.
It's who you are in Christ. Yeah.
You're gonna get hated on, right? But the thing is are what they saying drowning out what God's saying about you? See, God can close doors on the enemy, but he can also open doors that no man can shut. So, for example, if you open a door to Kalo TV, boom, boom, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Today we're going to talk about lanes, because lines and lanes help us stay where we're supposed to be. And we need to recognize that when we're in our lines, within our lanes, there's information that we don't really have. So sometimes it's good to stay in your lane, like competitive swimming. If you go outside your lane, I think you get disqualified or dinged. We all know, because we drive, you got to stay in your lane or you can have an accident. Kids learn how to color in the lines. That's an improved coloring skill. And then we have medical specialties where you wouldn't want a foot doctor to do brain surgery on you. So sometimes staying within the boundaries is good. In medicine, when it's public policy related, you have to recognize that holistic health is better than lane-driven health. And by that, what I mean is Dr. Fauci and the CDC have been regulating our COVID response within the lane of his sole specialty, I think, which is infectious disease. He's all concerned about who can catch it, what the medical effect of getting COVID might be. And we've had these lockdowns, and we've had mask wearing, and we've had social distancing and hand washing and all this stuff that comes out of his infectious disease control perspective, his lane. But I think what might have been missing is the holistic analysis, to have doctors from other lanes participate. And in particular, the cost of the Dr. Fauci approach has been high, very, very high, especially for people under 22 years old. And there's a study that we're going to talk about in more detail about comparing 2019 March and April statistics in the medical aspect and 2020 for people under 22 years old with mental illness issues. That shows that it's very interesting to me. In those 2 months in 2020, the incidence of going to a doctor for mental illness issues showing up on your medical insurance claim form, which means you were treated and now somebody's trying to get reimbursed. Between 2020 over 2019, March and April, the number of cases almost doubled. When at the same time, the overall medical, including mental health cases, cut in half. So if half as many people went to the doctor in March and April of 2020 over 2019, but twice as many of those half was more in the mental health for youth related to COVID, that tells you that the CDC and Dr. Fauci's infectious disease approach to COVID had a huge hole in it.
Is this how they develop new math?
I do not
because
know.
it makes absolutely no sense what you just said.
Well,
My eyes have glazed over.
It does, and I want to talk about something that actually came out last week.
Okay.
March 2nd,
Make it
actually
make sense.
this week. It was this week. A white paper by the Fair Health insurance guys. It's called The Impact of COVID-19 on Pediatric Mental Health, a study of private health claims. So who is Fair Health? Fair Health, let me find my notes here. Fair Health is a national independent nonprofit. They possess the nation's largest collection of private health care insurance claims data, which means when you go to the doctor and the doctor wants to get reimbursed, they have to put what you were talking with your doctor about in the right little block for insurance claim review purposes by this company.
God, you are being such an attorney
Listen
right
to
now.
this. They have
I'm trying.
more.
I got
Listen to
this.
this.
I got it.
This company has more than 32 billion claim records
I don't even.
that they used as the data in this study.
Wow.
So this is like the most super comprehensive statistical analysis
Which is
on
what
the
you
issue,
want to have.
which is what
Right.
you want. That's
Right.
the point. Okay.
Yes.
So what they did is they looked at those months over those years, patients 13 to 18, which is middle and high school, 19 through 22, which is college age. And they looked at the insurance claim box checking for anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic symptoms of those age groups during those times. And they found that school closure, remote learning, and isolation from friends was driving this, which tells me quit dealing with school closure because teacher unions don't want to get sick. These students need a holistic approach to COVID for themselves.
I know. You know, as you're saying this, Jim, I keep thinking that if we want to follow the science, right? Listen to the science. Human beings are social creatures. They are meant to be around other humans.
And I want to read a little teeny bit from this report on the study of what these medical conditions are.
Okay.
So mental health conditions, these are diagnoses, okay? Mood disorders, anxiety, dissociative, stress-related, somatoform, which I don't even know what that is, and other non-psychotic mental disorders and disorders of adult personality and behavior, which intentional self-harm, which include intentional self-harm by handgun discharge, intentional self-harm by sharp object, intentional self-harm by other specified means, and suicide attempt. Overdoses. These things are checked off separately, okay, to get reimbursed. Poisoning by, adverse effects of, and underdosing of drugs, medicaments, biological substances, and then substance use disorders, which are different, alcohol-related disorders, opioid-related disorders, cocaine-related disorders. So middle school, high school, and college kids in the 2 months of March and April 2020 had twice as many of those diagnoses seeking medical insurance reimbursements than in the 2 months in the year prior, when the entire 2 months of medical claims reduced by 50%. This is a big problem, and we need to get these schools open.
Can I just say, as an individual that had a teenager in my house doing schoolwork during lockdown, that I myself could have checked off half of those blocks as well. So not only was his life just absolutely turned upside down by the lockdown, and it still is, I, having to live in the household with someone like that, also caused me great anxiety and stress.
Well, so to get back to the analogy of the lanes, certainly teachers have a right to speak their mind at the table on school openings. Certainly they do. I understand not wanting to get sick. Has to be balanced against what's the prevalence and incidence of teachers getting sick in schools from regular flu and stuff like that. I know for my family personally, once our kids got elementary school, sickness in our house kind of disappeared. When we had elementary school kids, somebody always had a cold or a flu or something. So the teachers have a valid point, but to keep schools closed solely on that ground is, I don't even know what the adjective is. It's just horrible.
Well, I like your analogy of the lanes. You know, in across the world, you've got guardrails. It keeps people from going into the place they're not supposed to be going, right? If you're driving one way, you need to be going in the right direction. And I dare anyone to go to a bowling alley and throw their bowling ball into somebody else's lane.
I have done that because I am a crappy
Oh,
bowler.
well,
I actually have done that, and I was really super embarrassed.
Now, the question is, though, if you threw your ball into someone else's lane, did you get a strike or did you gutter it? Because that really
You know what?
is...
I don't remember the result because the banging on the lane was quite loud.
Oh,
That's what
gosh.
I remember.
Okay, so everybody listening and watching right now, they're having their bowling thoughts in their head. I know one time I picked up a ball that was not mine because it was the same color as mine, and it was so heavy I dropped it like behind me. That was pretty
You're
amusing.
a colorist.
Will you do not put me in a box? I don't like being in a box.
It was
I don't
the same
want to be in
color.
the box.
You took it. You thought it was yours.
Jim,
You're a
I don't want to be in a
colorist.
box.
All
All right, let it be known. No box for me. Okay.
So here's the thing. Somebody in public policy decision making needs to read this study.
Okay, read it again and where
It
it's
is
from.
the impact of COVID-19 on pediatric mental health, a study of private healthcare claim by FAIR Health, March 2nd, 2021. That needs to be the driving factor, or at least 50% of the driving information on deciding school opening.
Now, Jim, a lot of times, as people are beginning to watch the show, I'm getting a lot of input from people, and I'm sure you are too. A lot of people want to know, like, where does this Jim Hochberg come from? How can they contact you? So why don't you let everybody know if they want to comment on this wonderful article, or maybe they have a comment on something you've said? How can they reach you?
Do I have an email at Faith and Politics? I don't.
No, but you can give yours for now.
Okay, so my email is Jim, Jim, at jameshochberglaw.com, JamesHochberglaw.com. I should have a Jim at Faith and Politics.
We're setting.
I should. I never thought of it
It's
before.
coming. It's coming.
Oh, okay.
It's coming. So listeners and viewers, stay tuned. We will have a Jim at ColoTV.com coming up very shortly. So just keep trying. I mean, it'll be set up. Maybe by the time people are viewing, it'll be set up. So
But
anyway,
if this study is based on more than 32 billion with a B, data points, that's a lot. I mean, I never took statistics, but all the polls that we hear are with thousands of data points. This is 32 billion with a B. I think it's pretty authoritative.
Jim and I would like to hear your thoughts on this. So if you're watching on YouTube, on Colo TV, under playlists Faith and Politics, if you're watching this video, drop a comment about what you think about school lockdowns, and, tell us your stories. Tell us about your kids. Tell us some of the struggles that you've experienced, and maybe we'll give you a shout out on the show. And
think about this too. If somebody gets COVID and they're not old and they don't have some underlying bad disease, they got a 98-point-something% likelihood of full recovery. You don't fully recover for mental injuries. Emotional injuries are not the same as physical injuries.
Yeah,
this is really important.
And not only that, the other thing too is you don't always see when somebody's been hurt emotionally either, because it's under the surface. So, it is very important to us. And we do care about our keiki. We want to make sure that they're given the very best life possible, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on Faith and Politics. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what's happening right here in Hawaii.
Colo TV is proud to partner with Family Forum, keeping you informed on legislative issues affecting families in Hawaii today.
Aloha, I'm Eva Andrade. I'm the president of Hawaii Family Forum, and we've been serving Hawaii's faith-based community since 1998. What we do is we provide research and education to the faith-based community to help them understand what's happening at the state capitol and what's happening on the issues that affect the families here in Hawaii. If you would like more information, please visit us on the web. But in the meantime, know that Micah 6:8 says that the Lord requires of us to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And we can help you do that, not only to raise your voice the way that the Lord calls us to raise our voice, but to understand the issues on a scriptural basis. And we'll tell you how you can learn more about what's affecting Hawaii's families. Mahalo.
We have a mission here at Kalo TV. We continue to be the only local Christ-centered media outlet in Hawaii. God has planted this station to nourish believers and to harvest souls for eternity. It's a calling we hold dear, and today we need your help. Partner with us as we continue to create original local programs.
We're so very grateful for that whole journey.
Walking down to our story room.
Oh my gosh.
Showcase solid biblical teaching.
We reach more people in one day with the broadcast of the gospel.
It's music to God's ears.
Improve our infrastructure, and influence social media. Are you willing to labor with us for Hawaii, for your ohana, for the next generation? Go to kalotv.com and partner with us today.
Welcome back. And now, continuing the topic of election reform, Jim and I are going to talk about what's happening right here in Hawaii. So, Jim, as you know, our legislators are right now dealing with quite a number of election bills. And so, let's just kind of talk about some of them and we'll get your thoughts because we know not everybody has time to follow exactly what the legislature is doing. And for people that don't know, they put out about 1,900 bills every legislative session. And only a small percentage of those actually ever get passed into law.
Can I put in a kudo for you?
Go ahead.
So every legislative session, excuse me, which is from January to about April, Eva Andrade at Hawaii Family Forum goes through all of those thousands of proposed bills that get introduced as bills. She identifies the ones that are interesting to us either because they're potentially bad or potentially good. And she tracks them through the process and makes that information available to you. If you sign up at hawaiifamilyforum.org, and then when something comes up for a hearing, she provides the easiest way to give the government your opinion with good, the positive and negative stuff. Anyway, that's enough. But that people need to sign up.
No, people need to sign up. And to be clear, the bills we're going to be talking about in this section are not bills that Hawaii Family Forum is weighing in on. We're not.
No, it's because of HR 1.
Right. But because we're having the discussion, part of the reason we're doing this show is to educate you, the listeners and viewers, on what's going on, not only at the Hawaii State Capitol building, but also what's happening at our U.S. Congressional building. So, we really appreciate our new viewers, and we really appreciate you viewers that have been with us since the beginning. I mean, Jim and I both are getting a lot of good comments. So we might as well take this opportunity to thank Kalo TV for making this happen. I'll always remember that meeting with Kalo TV and Malala Po, the general manager, who just kind of, I met with him once, and the next thing I know, my life was never the same. This is why Christians never make eye contact with people, because it always means more work.
Well, so on Saturdays, I have a ministry at One Love in the cafe. I make coffees. I'm a barista. And because I'm there serving coffees to people, I hear a lot of feedback when I'm doing that about this show.
So here's the thing, people. We need you to make comments on YouTube. Go on and make comments. Let us know you agree with what we're saying. Let us know if you disagree with what we're saying. Let us know if there's a topic you want us to talk about. I mean, there are so many things we could talk about, right, Jim? We could be here.
Somebody said that it was important to get comments. I don't know why.
It is. On YouTube it is, because the way that their algorithms work, when you like it, make sure you like the video, make sure you share it. And what we want to do is we want to give away a great gift package to the first person that makes a comment on YouTube talking about what they like best about the show. So let us know what you like best about the show, and we'll get a gift to you. We'll get in contact with you. And we want to give a shout out to Glenn Stanton of Colorado Springs, who got our last gift because he commented on YouTube. So thanks for that, Glenn.
And what's really fun about that is I want to talk about these bills.
Yes, and we're going to talk about these bills. So thank you very much. Okay, so Hawaii, just like all the rest of the states, are having this discussion on election reform.
Because of what happened last November.
Although some people will
tell you nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happened.
Well, proof that it happened is the state of Hawaii
it was a blue state. You can't get any bluer than what I tell people, that Hawaii is so blue that people here are born singing country western music.
Oh,
that's how blue. That's an EVA statement.
But country western is red.
No, but country western is blue. You're blue. You're sad music. It's not the color.
Drop kick me Jesus through the goalposts of life.
Yes. Look that up. It's for real. Okay, so let's talk about some of these bills.
So I want to talk about the constitutional rights we don't have in this state.
Oh,
which includes the right to recall the governor or any state legislators. We don't have that right. They're doing it in California. It looks like they might do it if he doesn't resign in New York. In Hawaii, we have no constitutional right to recall the governor, lieutenant governor, or any of the state legislators. On the county levels, we do have it, but not on the state level, which is really weird to me.
Yeah, we as we continue on with this show, Jim, we're going to make a big deal, so to speak, about some of the things that would make Hawaii a much better politically active, equal opportunity state.
So the other interesting thing is even the House of Representatives in the state of Hawaii doesn't have the right to impeach the governor or the lieutenant governor. So there's a bill. Where did it go? House Bill 1339 relating to impeachment. The House of Representatives is proposing that they should have the same right that Congress has to impeach the president, Congress, that the Hawaii House should have that same right to impeach the governor or the lieutenant governor and send it over to the Senate, just like in Congress, to either convict or acquit the executive that was impeached. Interesting that we don't have that here. I don't know what kind of state this is, but once somebody gets elected, they're pretty much home free unless this bill passes.
And just as you know, again, at full transparency, who introduced this bill?
So this was my friend Della Bellotti.
Della Bellotti, for those of you that don't know, she is the majority leader in the state House of Representatives.
And it's had hearings.
And she's a Democrat.
And the Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee on March 2nd, should put my glasses on, passed this measure unamended, and it's moving for further process to pass. Now, why would anybody vote against this in either the House or the Senate? It gives them more power. It doesn't negatively affect them at all unless they're secretly thinking of becoming the governor or the lieutenant governor. That could be. Well, but I think it should pass. And I think they should also put a constitutional amendment in to change our state constitution to give the people the right to recall. Now's the time to do it. It's happening in two of the biggest states in the country.
Yeah, it's a conversation that needs to happen in the state of Hawaii. Because we're so blue, we can't do things like immediate. You know, it takes education. It takes building relationship with your legislators. And as always, we encourage people to do that in a graceful way. I mean, you don't have to threaten people and tell them they're going to the fiery pits of hell if they don't do what you want. Although I know some people are so fed up that that's the first thing that comes out of their mouth, you know? Okay, so that's one of the bills. The other bill you wanted to talk about as well was the bill that would...
SB 1289.
Yes, that would expand access of election watchers during election. Now, again, why do we need to do...
That was one of the complaints in those 5 swing states in the presidential election, that the Republican poll watchers were excluded from watching the handling of the ballot.
And we don't know that there's been any problems with poll watchers here in Hawaii. So this isn't a bad bill. In fact, we would encourage there to be more poll watchers, right?
Why not?
In fact, I think that people that are interested should become poll watchers. It's not hard to do. The Office of Elections, it's hawaii.gov/elections. You can get information on how to be a poll watcher here in this state.
But again, even Hawaii, the bluest of blue states, is taking action that is antithetical to what the House of Representatives did on March 2nd or March 3rd, passing H.R. 1.
Well, it's interesting because talking about H.R. 1, there are several bills here that are doing the same thing. They've got bills moving that will require any person who is eligible to vote and applies for a motor vehicle driver's license, they're going to be automatically registered. They're passing a bill that would amend the content to be included in an election proclamation that is required to be filed not later than 4:30 p.m. on the 10th day. They're doing certain statutory deadlines. They want to work on that.
So a lot of that stuff is to comply with federal deadlines, because when you do have elections for Congress and for the president, those are national offices, the Senate, the House, and the presidency. And it's kind of problematic when voting is happening at different times in different states on those national elections. But it's up to the local government to decide they don't want the problem or they don't care about having the problem. And it's up to them. It's not up to Congress.
I made half a joke, and I mean it's half a joke because I'm half serious and half joke, that, there should be a blackout on the announcement of the winner of the president until the last polls, which include Hawaii and Alaska, close, because so many people end up not voting because they already get, you're seeing that map, right? They're on election night and you're seeing blue, 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 or red, 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 red. And so people are feeling like my vote's not going to count anyway, so I'm not going to vote. Now, Hawaii, up until last year, was still one of the lowest in the nation at voter registration and turnout. That did change in the last election because now everybody got mailed a ballot, right?
That's true. But you know what was really bad? Watching the election returns on national TV, because it was a presidential election, which is what I did. They called Hawaii for Biden like 13 seconds after the polls were supposed to close, but they actually didn't close for 3 hours.
Well, I think that was the complaint. And I've heard that, Jim, as you know, I've been doing this job since 1994, working with public policy and educating people in the community. And one of the biggest complaints is that people here in Hawaii, that they feel like their vote doesn't matter because we only have, a few electoral vote. You know what I mean? So it's like we're the odds are stacked up against us.
We're the odd stepchild.
We are, but that's fine. Now, I also want to talk about a bill that just you and I have to laugh that we're seeing it. This bill would require the language and meaning of any proposed constitutional amendment to be simple, concise, and direct to the extent practicable.
Practicable.
Yes.
It means practical, not practical.
Boy, I'm having trouble with my words today, Jim.
Remember the bill that's in there to amend the Constitution to say that the Department of Education has to be efficient and do a good job? I forget what the one word is for that. And this is the same thing. My response to that is, well, you would think that all constitutional amendments always should be what this bill is asking us to require.
You would think.
And you would think that all government offices should do a good job and be efficient. So why would you need to add that to the Constitution? But then the flip side, as a lawyer, when I'm arguing to a judge about what's in the Constitution, if it's only in the article on the Department of Education, then that means it doesn't apply to any of the other parts of the Constitution. Only the Department of Education is required to be efficient and do a good job. And that's stupid.
Okay. Well, on that note, we want you to stay plugged into Faith in Politics. We'll be back next week. And as always, we'll continue to talk about those things that are happening across the nation. We want people to sign up at hawaiifamilyforum.org if you want to get alerts. Go to kalotv.com if you want to know more about how to partner with us to make this show possible. We want to thank K-Light Radio for making this beautiful studio available. Check out their great programming and the great programs that they have. Programs, you know what I'm saying. And we want to thank Kalo TV for their continued partnership. So we will see you next week. Mahalo, everybody.